Got
We
it.
are now recording. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. If folks join, they can kind of catch up, but I want to be mindful of your time. So welcome to one of our orientation events for new CASA volunteers. I think I've either emailed or maybe communicated in other Zoom meetings with some of you. But for those that don't know me, I'm Jenny, and I work with the Athens County CASA program at Athens County Juvenile Court. And we really try to hold these little orientations in advance of our pre-service kicking off, because there's a lot of content packed into our pre-service, and sometimes we don't always get to go through some of those housekeeping things. So we try to use this session just to go through some of those things. So to let you know a little bit more about me, I've been with CASA since 2013. Before that, I worked in direct services child protection. I worked there for a number of years, doing ongoing casework. I also was a forensic interviewer doing childhood sexual assault investigations. I've also in the past worked in a domestic violence shelter, and I was on faculty at OU, Ohio University, for about 5 years, doing child welfare education, kind of concurrent to my children's services and CASA work. My two coworkers who co-train with me are actually not able to join us this evening, but they both come from human services and social work backgrounds. One of my coworkers, Tara, and I worked at Children's Services together for many years before both coming up to CASA. And Jess, our coworker, Jess, she's a social worker, and she has a lot of nonprofit experience before coming into CASA. She actually worked for community food initiatives for a number of years. And I think many of you probably have met Jess because she does a lot of our interviews in the Athens office. Athens CASA actually hosts training for a number of other counties. So we often are kind of the training center for CASA programs in Scioto County, Meigs and Gallia, sometimes Hocking County. And we actually have a hybrid training platform that uses Google Classroom. And actually people from all over the state of Ohio join that. So I'll walk through our Google Classroom with each of you here in a few minutes. But you'll notice when you get into it during our November cohort that there are people from across the state of Ohio in that Google Classroom. So just like you're doing live sessions with us every week, they're doing their live sessions with their counties. So in Athens County, we host the live sessions for Athens, Meigs, and Gallia counties, and sometimes Perry County, but I don't think we have any Perry County volunteers with us this November. So that's kind of cool that we get to share this perspective with programs all across Ohio. So you'll get to mix and mingle with people all over. All right. So since this is being recorded and I'm going to put it on YouTube, normally if we were doing this in person, I would ask everyone to introduce themselves and share a little bit, but I won't have you do that on YouTube. We'll save that for our first in-person session next week. But I always like to share a little bit about the staff background because, we'll share stories throughout the training and things like that to kind of color in the lines a little bit. To start with, before I get into some nuts and bolts, I just want to extend thanks to all of you for kind of taking that first step and getting involved with CASA. It is no secret that in Southeastern Ohio, we are hurting for CASA volunteers right now. Specifically in Athens County, our caseload is busting at the seams. We just today, I think, opened our 116th new case of 2021. And for a little bit of context, in Athens County, in all of 2020, we opened 100 cases. So we are on track to really eclipse the number of new filings that we had in recent years. So we are grateful that we had a number of people, and there's some that aren't on this orientation session live, that have stepped forward and are willing to go through training and to become a CASA volunteer. We know it's a time when lives are busier than ever as we try to navigate pandemic life. And I know we feel a little kooky in our office sometimes trying to navigate hybrid meetings and in-person meetings and some Zoom meetings, and we all just feel like we're running around in circles. So the fact that all of you have chosen to carve out time and energy and brain power and heart power means a lot. So I will get right into kind of the nuts and bolts. I'm going to share my screen a few times. I think most of you have probably seen this already, but I want to highlight it and use it as an anchor. Share screen. I have to actually push the buttons. Okay. I think you've all probably seen this schedule. So the sessions that are highlighted in blue are part of the required trainings. And so they're happening in person at the Athens Community Center, but we do have a Zoom option if you're not able to attend in person, one of the sessions or something like that. The sessions are being held in the city of Athens, which does have a mask mandate, which we are honoring and following. So masks are required throughout this for the entire session. We actually did a test run training last night with some of our current CASAs, and the room is fabulous. We could really spread out in there. The community center did a great job getting it set up for us, and we only had a couple of hiccups with the hybrid, with some people Zooming and some people in person. So I think we're going to get better and better each week at that. We, already ordered a couple extra microphones to place around the room to make sure that that's really seamless. But our hope is that if you're able and comfortable, that you'll join us for the in-person session, because a lot of the sessions are really built around discussion and activities. And sometimes we break off into small groups. So we do think there is a benefit, but we also recognize that in this day and age and with the current situation in public health, we do want to always have that Zoom option available. So for us, we are going to make the assumption that trainees will be there in person, unless you let us know otherwise. So if on Tuesday, that you're going to be Zooming, or, you're worried you've had a possible exposure or whatever it is, and you want to come in person or come via Zoom, if you could let us know by Tuesday in each week, one, so we can set the room up accordingly, but then two, we order dinner for everyone at the training session. So we want to make sure we're ordering dinner, the right numbers of dinner. Especially now we're trying to order individually wrapped, where, we used to get away with a pizza. So the count didn't make so much difference, but now we're trying to order individually wrapped and individually boxed dinners for everyone. So just please let us know on Tuesday of each week if you think you might be Zooming. Otherwise, we're going to kind of make the assumption that you'll be there in person. Life happens, and if you have to miss a session, we do ask that you let us know about that ahead of time. We are allowed to do one makeup session. So if you miss all 5 of them, we'll kind of say, hey, let's wait and come back in the spring. We can't do 5 makeups, but we can do one makeup session with you, which is kind of a lot of independent work for you. And then we meet one-on-one to go over the content and the activities. So we are permitted to do that. We don't like to do it. We don't love it, but we know life happens, and that's okay. And we can work with you on that. Any questions so far? All right, cool. I was like, it's always hard on Zoom. I'm like judging everyone's screens. So I'm like, okay, do they look overwhelmed, underwhelmed, or the right amount of whelmed? I don't know.
Just one question. Are you going to tell us about the Learning Lab?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I will. Actually, let's do that now. So the Learning Lab is highly encouraged. We can't require it, but it is highly encouraged. We typically do it on the Saturday following our last session. That's when we have it scheduled now. And the Learning Lab this year will be in person, unless we've done it virtual before, but it really has to be all or nothing. We can't do it hybrid very easily. So as of now, we're planning to do the Learning Lab in person, masked, of course. If things really take a turn for the worse, we'll, reassess that as we go. I mean, in everything, we're reassessing on a weekly basis. So the Learning Lab is everyone's very favorite part of the entire training. The Learning Lab, we actually give you a case. It's a simulated case, but you actually get a case file that has all of the pleadings, all of the filings, case plans, all kinds of fun stuff. And you'll get that about a week and a half in advance. You'll have time to plan your investigation, do research on the case. And then when you get to the learning lab, which we usually host in our courthouse, like in our big building, we have actors that play all of the various parties. So you get to go around and interview them, and they do not break character. They stay in character. They're very good. And you get to interview them and then draft a court report with recommendations based on the information that you've gathered. So it's kind of this safe space to practice all of the skills. And the cool thing is you can walk in and you start to explain, if you're meeting with the child and you start to explain what CASA is, and then you really mess it up. You're like, oh, no, I didn't say that right. You can say, I'm going to start over, walk back out, walk back in and start over. So it's this very safe space to try out all of those new skills. So it's highly encouraged that everyone attend the learning lab. But yeah, it's really fun. It's everyone's favorite part of the training. And then you'll see also in December, we have, and the swearing in ceremony is still tentative. I'm waiting to make sure that that's clear on the judge's calendar. But as of now, we're planning to do that on the 15th of December. So that's actually, and that's for Athens County, the swearing in ceremony. If you're from Meigs or Gallia County, you'll get sworn in your home county, probably on a different day. But that's also a fun day to make it official. Any questions about the schedule or the process for the schedule? All righty, cool. So as I mentioned, our training does take, it is pretty comprehensive. And I will say that we cover a lot of tough topics. We try to prepare you, from a 360-degree view to be a CASA volunteer. So we do cover topics like mental health, substance use disorder. We, of course, talk a lot about child abuse and neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, educational neglect. We talk a lot about poverty and domestic violence. So sometimes the topics can be very sensitive. And so we really work through those as a group. We also spend a lot of time processing and unpacking how we react to those situations, right? We all have those certain topics that are, maybe a hot topic for us. So we kind of work through the process of how you get support in your role as a CASA and how to kind of unpack that. The example I always share for me, my husband and I have built our family through foster care adoption. And so every once in a while, I will encounter a case professionally that kind of makes me think of my son's own story. And so I have to be a little extra careful because I know I might feel a little more emotional about that, or it might lend me to react a certain way. So, I have a kind of a support plan for that on those days where I'm like, oh, that hits a little close to home. And work through that. So we kind of work with you on that, and we're there for you every step of the way, of course, but we are very intentional about that. Obviously, I went to school for a really long time to be a social worker, and we know our CASA's part of the design of the CASA program is that people come from all walks of life and all perspectives and all backgrounds to do this work and bring this common sense perspective and this kind of everyday perspective. So we do really kind of ask you to be okay with being a little uncomfortable in some of the conversations, because sometimes we might share a perspective on something that maybe is different than the way that you've thought. That comes up a lot with like substance use, right? There are a lot of ideas out there about when people are struggling with addiction and, oh gosh, why couldn't they just stop using? Why couldn't they just choose their kids? Or, and that's a really common reaction that we hear, right? You've probably heard that out in the community. So we really look through breaking down some of those preconceived notions and really looking at addiction as a disease, for example, and how do we support this family in their recovery from this, in this person in their recovery from this disease. So we definitely, the training challenges perspectives, but like in a really good way. So a lot of our CASA volunteers tell us that the training was really transformative, just not only to be a CASA volunteer, but just to be kind of an informed member of the community. Because many of us don't have, some of the experiences that the children we serve have. So I hope that you'll keep that spirit in mind as you go through the training. And we try to make it really fun and interactive, especially on the days that the content might be a little bit heavy. So we really do try to create like a good culture within our training environment. The training we do, in addition to the live sessions, we give pre-work. So the training in whole is, the content is about 30 hours. You'll notice that we only have 15 hours of live classroom work planned. And that's because we have pre-work. So we follow the National CASA curriculum, and a lot of the curriculum is just kind of, reading or watching a video, things like that. So we have hybridized that model, and there's some of that you can do in advance rather than coming into the classroom setting for that. So we use Google Classroom. I'm going to share my screen again. So we use Google Classroom to serve this. Right now, the stream looks a little bit blank. And this is where I mentioned you'll notice that there are people from lots of different counties in this Google Classroom. So it's a shared cohort, and we actually host this on behalf of Ohio CASA, which is the Ohio CASA Association. I always tell people to start with the classwork tab, and don't get overwhelmed. You're looking at the facilitator view or the teacher view. So mine has a lot more stuff on it than you're going to see. But we release one module a week at a time. So you'll actually, starting next week, you'll see this module 1 pre-work become available. And that's what you complete in advance of our first session next Wednesday. It takes people different amounts of time. Some of it's kind of reading or doing an activity, or, for example, the Child Welfare History and Legal Framework. That's just, kind of an article to read or a video to watch. So our hope is that you do the pre-work before you come to the live session. It kind of gives you a sneak peek at your case study each week. You can get to know the case study that we're going to work on that week. So you can check out all of that in advance. You are welcome to print anything that you want. But anything that you need physically in the class, we will give to you if you're in the in-person class. If you are participating via Zoom, we actually add supplemental handouts each week as well. So if you're coming in person, don't worry about printing the supplemental handouts. We'll have them available for you. You'll also get a manual at the first in-person session that has a lot of this material in it. But I know some people don't like to read off the screen. They really want to hold it. So you're welcome to print that, but you'll also get a lot of this information in your training manual. So that is Google Classroom. Any questions about Google Classroom? It's pretty straightforward, but any questions about it? Okay, cool. If you run into anything, we are a small office and we all do a little bit of everything. So if you find a link that's broken or a document that doesn't open, please send one of us a quick message and we can fix it almost instantly. But that has happened where maybe the link has expired or something, but just bring that to our attention. And also there's always good old human error. We could have entered it incorrectly. So you're not bugging us. Please don't wait a week and then say, oh yeah, that never opened. Just let us know and we'll fix it if you come across anything like that. Okay, a few more things to know. Tomorrow morning, for the Athens County volunteers, you should get an email from us letting you know and letting you set up your new Athens CASA email address. So everyone who volunteers with us gets an email address. And once you're a volunteer and you start getting cases, that actually becomes really important because that is a secure email address, and that's where we send your case information. So you'll get that. It's actually set up through the Google, like G Suites. So you'll just log into Google, you'll get instructions for it. But that's actually how we'll add you into Google Classroom, is through that Google email address, that Athens CASA email address. Again, any trouble, just let us know and we can troubleshoot that. When I say we, I definitely don't mean me. I mean, Jess will fix it, but I will let her know that it's a problem. She works in that system a lot more than I do and is much more competent and efficient at it than I am. So tomorrow morning, expect a communication from us about that new email address. And then in that will be your invitation to join the Google Classroom. If you volunteer with another county, you'll get it in your email address that your director provided to us to be the training communication. So you'll get an invitation to join the Google Classroom. And if you're with Megs or Galia, I know Chelsea, your director, she sometimes just goes in and adds people right to the Google Classroom herself. So you can expect that if you're outside of Athens County. What questions are there? Okay. All right. Well, that's good. I mean, I must have answered them all. I was like looking at my list, worried I forgot something, but great. So next steps are look for that email. And once you log into your Athens CASA email for the first time, you'll get the Google Classroom invite. And the pre-work will be posted tomorrow as well. So if you are one of those people who likes to get stuff done right away, you can go in and check that out right away. Also, the Google Classroom, we keep it open indefinitely. I mean, as long as Google will let us, we'll keep it open. So it's kind of your space. We do give you a printed training manual, which we hope kind of becomes a desk reference for you, but they're yours. So feel free to write all over them. We also invite you in Google Classroom. It never fails during the training. You'll start just magically seeing more and more media content about child welfare, or about child abuse, or about trauma. And as you come across and you find a good TED Talk or a good article, please share it in the Google Classroom. It only enriches the discussion. Same thing with the class, there's opportunities where we'll ask you to make a class comment and kind of start a discussion online. And the more that people do that, the better that the training is, because we all learn from each other. That's the really cool thing about CASA training, is that we all bring our own experiences and our own expertise to the training. So it gets really rich when we know everyone's contributing. So make it your own, share, post videos, post articles you come across, your perspective. It really just makes it better and better. I know I have access to every cohort we've ever done. I think there, I don't know how many there are, 25 of them. And I'll go back and, because some of them, the trainees really shared a lot of great videos or resources. So it's kind of cool. And we'll share extra stuff along the way, stories and videos and things like that, but definitely make it your own.
I have a quick question. I know there'll be a background check. Is that something that we need to do anything for?
So Sarah, I know that Jess had just talked to you today, but you should get a form that's called I think we have a very official name for it. I think it sounds like conditional acceptance. And it has, we have a compliance center on our website where you go and there's like 3 or 4 documents that you submit so we can authorize the background check. So you'll receive that. And then I think, Liz, you already did it. I think I think I got the alert that yours were already in there. And then we run the background check. There's no cost to the volunteer for anything. And unfortunately, we're not, if you've had a background check for another volunteer job, or we're not allowed to reuse them. We do have to run our own. But there is
they're valid for a year anyway, aren't they?
Yeah.
And what about an interview? I haven't had an interview yet, I guess.
Yeah, so Jess will schedule your one-on-one as well. I think when we saw your application, we're like, just tell her about the orientation and we'll schedule that part later, because we wanted to make sure you didn't miss out on this cohort. But yep, Jess will work on scheduling that with you. And we just like to go through the application and kind of go through everything together with everyone. And then we work on getting background checks and consent forms and things like that back. Also, if you don't like to use the online compliance center where you submit to our kind of Dropbox, feel free to bring copies you can bring copies to the office, or you can bring copies to training and we can snag them that way too. We usually don't actually run the background checks until about 2 weeks into training, just because sometimes people start the training and then kind of realize it's maybe not what they were wanting to do. So We usually wait a few weeks to do the training. We also sometimes have to wait for everybody to get there. Sometimes people don't have their social security number or social security card handy. So just work on getting those to us. But yeah, you'll get a kind of a conditional acceptance letter from Jess that has the link there. But that's a good question. Thank you.
Where is your office located in Athens County?
Yep, our Athens office is actually inside of the Athens County Courthouse. So the big building at the corner of Court in Washington. And we are on the second floor near the probate office. We kind of have a sign outside of our office door. And as a heads up, if you've ever been into the Athens County Courthouse, you do have to go through security. So I always let everyone know to be prepared and maybe not have full pockets.
They're open at night? They're open after 5 o'clock?
We are open 8 to 4.
But I mean for the trainings are at the community center. That's right.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. And for the learning lab, we do it in the courthouse and it's on a weekend. But we actually walk everyone in through a back staff door. Like we have swipe tags to get everyone in that way. So, but it is a little bit of a pain because we're always very nervous about setting the alarm off. So we are extra careful. It's like, I don't know what happens if you set the alarm off, but I don't want to find out. So, okay. Well, we're efficient in covering all of this information. And so I will be mindful of everyone's time. It's the evening and look for those emails tomorrow. And I will post the pre-work. So you'll have access to that as soon as you get into Google Classroom. And then I'll plan on seeing everyone next week at our first training session.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.